Part 127. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1261. In front of me, there is no one. She didn't want to kill Zuyun, but she just wanted to use Zuyun to plot against the Lingzun swordsman. But he never thought that what Zuyun cared about the most was the murderous intention hidden in his Zi mansion by the Lingzun swordsman. Once the Lingzun swordsman died, no one could control this murderous intention. What was he still doing here? There is a large formation, there are spiritual stones, and the 9 floors of the demon refining tower are all under his control. Oops, Fairy Xianxia said to herself with a cold face. Even if I was dragged here from the formation by this kid, I think he could hide anywhere in the formation. However, no matter where this kid goes, it's impossible to run back, right? Hee, I will definitely meet Xianxia and the others and end up in a worse situation. But before that, I have to find a way to go back. It's best to tell Xianxia in advance. Fairy Xianxia suddenly turned against her because she was coerced by Xianxia. As the spirit master swordsman guessed, it was indeed unreasonable for her to be the first to reach the 9th floor. But things happened like lightning. Before he could think about it, he fell into Fairy Xianxia's conspiracy and died here. At this time, the 8th floor. Fairy Xianxia has been in this tower for a long time, why hasn't she returned yet? Could it be that she died inside? The red-haired fairy was still standing beside Xianxia, seeming to be talking to herself, but in fact she was talking to her. What danger could there be in this tower? Xianxia said, if Zuyun is on the 9th level, he is not in the stage of becoming a god. Even if he gets the inheritance from the immortal tower, unless he becomes an immortal, he will never be the opponent of Fairy Xianxia. Furthermore, if the Lingzun swordsman secretly entered the 9th floor first, he would definitely not attack Fairy Xianxia. After hearing about the Lingzun sword master, the red boy fairy couldn't help but be startled, and said in shock, "Sister, are you saying that the Lingzun sword master did not escape from the fairy tower, but wants to seize the inheritance?" "Yes," Xianxia said lightly, "it is absolutely impossible for the Lingzun swordsman to leave the immortal tower. This is also the purpose of sending Fairy Xianxia into this lair." At first, when Fairy Xianxia was allowed to advance, all the tribulation stagers were dissatisfied. However, due to the fact that there were 3 tribulation stages standing behind her, all the dissatisfaction could only remain in their stomachs. But when they heard Xianxia say the purpose of this move, they suddenly realized. No one sympathizes with the Spirit Master Swordsman. I just feel lucky that it wasn't the Spirit Master Swordsman who showed up at that time. It seemed that the inheritance of this immortal pagoda belonged to Xianxia. However, none of them dared to leave since the matter was not settled yet. No one paid attention to a seemingly seriously injured Lingzun swordsman, but he was plotted against by Xianxia. One can only imagine how deep this woman's scheming was. Not to mention being frightened during these tribulation periods, at least they were very secretive. No one would say anything more, and the look in the red girl's eyes showed some pity. Ingratiating yourself with such a person will probably not end well for the red girl fairy. Who is taking advantage of her doesn't know yet. "Sister Zhong, how long have we been waiting here? What if Fairy Xianxia or Lingzun swordsman gets the inheritance in this fairy tower and turns around to deal with us?" Xianxia chuckled lightly and said, "If sister is afraid of losing her inheritance, why don't you go in and take a look at this time?" The red-haired female fairy was stunned for a moment, then said ecstatically, "Aren't you afraid that your elder sister will take the inheritance? Immortal fate, fairy fate, the opportunity to become an immortal. If this fate belongs to my sister, what else can I say? Although my sister is strong, she is not stronger than this immortal in the sky." Xianxia seemed to really not care about the inheritance of this fairy tower. The red boy fairy was so excited that she could hardly believe it. But when she thought about Xianxia just letting Fairy Xianxia in, it was obvious that what she said was true. There was no trace of it. Fake. Thinking of this, the red boy fairy thought for a moment. Fairy Xianxia's strength is not on par with hers. Even if Ling Zun's sword master is among them, her seriously injured body cannot make any trouble. This shows that I can really seize the opportunity. Then sister, wait a moment, sister will come as soon as she goes. The red-haired fairy looked over the rest of the people in the tribulation stage with a look of pride, and thought to herself, do you really think I am licking my face and following her just to please her? When I get the inheritance from the immortal pagoda, everyone here will count as one. The red-haired fairy plunged into the light gate, but what was waiting for her was endless void. Is this the big formation again? She was slightly startled, but she also came to her senses. It was not difficult to break through this formation, it was just about destroying all the stars. A crazy smile appeared on her face, and the red light all over her body swelled, and mysterious flames emerged, spreading towards the void. When she and the others broke through the Dozwan seeing shifting formation in the mountain, she naturally had some remaining strength, but there was only one Fairy Xianxia here at most, so she had to use her full strength. At the same time, by expanding your magical power, you can also discover Fairy Xianxia as early as possible, and even the possible Ling Zun swordsman who appears. This is to take precautions before burning. But soon, the red boy fairy discovered that things didn't seem that simple. The stars would be instantly destroyed within the reach of the flames. But after a few breaths passed, the starlight only dimmed a little. When she looked carefully again, she was suddenly surprised and her magical power stopped. After being burned for several breaths by my fire technique, why is the starlight still brighter than the previous formation? With hesitation in her heart, she also looked into the distance, and then she realized that the stars were bigger and brighter. How did she know that these were arranged by high-grade spiritual stones? Not good. Suddenly, several weaker stars in the sea of fire suddenly smashed down at him, with amazing momentum and extremely fast speed. Top-grade spirit stones, this is the strongest thing in the spirit world that contains spiritual power. How can it be so easy to attack with several of them? Red Boy Fairy suddenly dodged to one side, but before she could settle, another knife light shot out from the void. Spiritual Master Swordsman? Red Boy Fairy was still in shock, and saw another ray of light coming from the other side. There is no doubt that this is the Red Cloud Fairy. You bitch! She yelled in shock, and saw a graceful figure with a sinister face coming out. I'm afraid that in this spirit world, the name of bitch belongs to only you, right? The Red Cloud Fairy said coldly. The previous knife light was the spiritual knife of the spiritual master swordsman. She also played a trick. Although the spiritual master swordsman died, his knife was an extraordinary thing. Only the knife appeared without the person, which would make the Red Boy Fairy still need to pay attention. In this way, she will have a chance to kill the Red Boy Fairy here. If Xianxia comes up, she can completely push the blame on Zuyun. Based on her guess about Xianxia, the other party will definitely order the other tribulations to break the Dozwan Xinyi formation together. Otherwise, it can also divert Xianxia's dissatisfaction with her poor performance. If killing others can keep yourself alive, why not kill people? Fairy Xianxia had this idea, and she immediately had a plan after discovering the Red Boy Fairy. But she didn't know that all this was seen clearly by Zuyun, who was standing outside the formation. He even participated in this plan. No one can avoid his perception after entering the formation. The formation was arranged by him, so everything was under his control. Zuyun deliberately moved Fairy Xianxia to the vicinity of the exit. After the death of the spiritual venerable swordsman, although the sword light and murderous intent threatened him, there was no need to hide in the great universe world or the immortal mansion for the time being. No one can control the murderous intent, so it doesn't matter where he is. Xianxia, you are looking for death. Red Boy Fairy barely avoided the ray of light, stood still, and a pillar of fire ignited in her hand. "You are the one looking for death," Fairy Xianxia smiled coldly, and suddenly shouted, "Sword Master, why don't you do it?" As soon as these words came out, Fairy Red Boy was shocked, and hurriedly used her magical power to protect her body with fire again to avoid being attacked and killed by the spiritual sword. At this time, Fairy Xianxia's figure sank into the void again and disappeared. "Bitch, let me see how I deal with you, where can you hide?" The clothes on Fairy Red Boy quickly darkened, and the flames also turned the same color, and even faintly emitted a blue light. Her face quickly became old, like an old woman who was dying at any time. But the fluctuation of spiritual power became stronger because of this. Swish! 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 Suddenly, 3 rays of light came from 3 directions, attacking the upper, middle, and lower paths of the Red Boy Fairy. Each ray of light had the power to break thousands of troops. The Red Boy Fairy did not dare to be in danger. She was in the flames and quickly pinched a spell with her hands. Whoosh! The flames surged, but it was more like the raging waves in the sea. Fire waves shot out from her body and greeted the 3 rays of light. Boom! Almost at the same time, the rosy light and the fire light collided with each other, making a huge roar. The formation trembled, and dozens of stars around were also shattered. The scattered spiritual power and the 2 kinds of light intertwined, and even Zuyun outside the formation was shocked. Is this the true strength of the life and death battle of the tribulation period? He couldn't help but feel fortunate that the tribulation period he had dealt with before all underestimated him and didn't even use one of his 10,000 strengths. After the light was shattered, Zuyun also calmed down, took out several spirit stones from his waist, and quickly filled the vacant position. When the 2 of them fight, no matter how many stars are affected, he will be defeated in time. If this formation is destroyed, he doesn't know when he can solve the hidden danger of Xianxia. When he saw her before, she was only in the nascent soul stage, but when Mu Huashan saw her again, she was in the spiritualization stage. When he heard about her again, she was in the void refining stage. Is this the horror of talent? Zuyun was afraid that if he didn't kill her now, he would never be able to kill her next time. Because he knew Xianxia very well, he knew that this was a female cultivator who would do anything to achieve her goals, and she came from a humble place, and she would never make the mistake of despising the enemy. In other words, if Xianxia was a little stronger, he, Zuyun, would die if he met her. He kept replenishing spirit stones to maintain the strength of the Dozhuan Xinyi formation, but he silently said in his heart, Xianxia, Xianxia, please come to the 9th floor quickly. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 1262. Because the spiritual sword master never appeared, the Red Boy Fairy had to be on guard, and the Red Cloud Fairy was relentless and her offensive became more and more fierce. After a long attack, the Red Boy Fairy found that it was not a solution to keep doing so, so she had to slowly let go of her defense and turn to attack. In this way, the Red Boy Fairy gradually turned the situation around. By the time the 2 were evenly matched and had exchanges with each other, they had consumed a lot. Similarly, Zuyun also spent thousands of Dozhuan Xinyi's spirit stones. This is not a solution. At this rate of consumption, I'm afraid I won't be able to kill the rest of the cultivators later. Zuyun relied on having enough spirit stones, but because of the Red Boy Fairy's attempts and the slightly restrained fighting style of the Red Cloud Fairy, it was difficult to break the situation. Besides, when did he know that Xianxia and others would come up? From the conversation between the 2 women, he could more or less hear that Xianxia might not rashly go up to this level and break the balance with external force. Thinking of this, Zuyun immediately came up with a plan. As long as one person attacks wildly, the other person will not have any spare strength. What if the red boy fairy knew that the spiritual sword master was dead? He stopped filling the formation with spirit stones and turned to pinch the formation formula. Suddenly, the starlight in the formation flowed, and a strange scene appeared. They had their own plans, so they stopped immediately after such a change, retreated half a mile, and watched the strange scene closely. I saw that the 9 stars suddenly gathered together and slowly moved towards the center of the distance between the two. The starlight seemed to be dragging something, and it was not very clear in the void. Until the 9 stars suddenly stopped, and then burned spiritual power, and bloomed endless brilliance at the same time within a breath. Although it was fleeting, the faces of both of them changed. What the 9 stars pulled over was actually a headless male corpse. This was the spiritual sword master. Fairy Xianxia was furious, knowing that this must be Zuyun's trick. But the red boy fairy laughed, 9 stars pulling corpses, it turns out that the spiritual master swordsman is dead. Xianxia, what can you use to threaten me now? As the starlight faded, the red boy fairy no longer had any scruples in her heart and began to attack with all her strength. Under this situation, the red boy fairy also used all her strength to resist. The two of them had a very exquisite grasp of spiritual power. They once again interacted with each other, but they did not have the spare power to disperse like before, thus damaging the star source of the Dozhuan Xinyi formation and causing the loss of the formation. Zuyun was relieved immediately. This was good. The speed of spiritual power replenishment slowed down, and it could more or less last until Xianxia and others reached the 9th floor. It was indeed as Zuyun guessed. Xianxia and others waited for a long time until no one came down from the 9th floor, and then ordered everyone to enter the tower at the same time. But he still gave an order. If they were trapped by the formation, they would immediately bombard the stars and smash the formation as soon as possible. But what she didn't expect was that as long as they entered this level, every move would be under Zuyun's control. Xianxia thought she didn't underestimate the enemy, but she still underestimated Zuyun's attainments in the art of formation. Even though he was only in the spiritualization stage, Zuyun's lifelong learning was all immortal arts and magic that surpassed ordinary cultivators. The worst fire separation curse was once learned by the fire separation of the formation immortal, such as the fire separation immortal. It's this formation again. After appearing in the familiar endless void, Xianxia still didn't panic at all, just like when she was on the first level. But this time, she was prepared and calmer than before. Zuyun, Zuyun, no matter how many tricks you have, what can you do? The void was vast, and she didn't appear with other tribulation stage cultivators, but through the unique immortal arts in her body, she could sense the existence of 3 tribulation stage cultivators. This was her amulet, and the reason why she gave the previous order. Let the group of tribulation cultivators have no time to have any dissenting thoughts, and take this opportunity to kill her. Xianxia rushed to the subordinates closest to her, and the 3 of them also rushed towards Xianxia. They had seen Xianxia's methods before, complete control, and cold-blooded enough. Although they did not suffer, they knew that once Xianxia attacked them, they would be killed. Outside the formation, Zuyun's hand that was filling the spirit stone also froze. Xianxia, it's really Xianxia. He was stunned for a moment, and then decided to attack Xianxia immediately. But the loss of spirit stones in the formation was also under the destruction of other tribulation cultivators, and it became faster. Zuyun knew that the opportunity was fleeting. When the 3 tribulation cultivators arrived, it would be difficult to kill them with the power of the formation. After pinching the formation formula, the stars around Xianxia suddenly moved, and smashed towards Xianxia with lightning speed. Zuyun did not dare to gather all the power of the formation, fearing that after killing Xianxia, he would not have time to hide in the world of the universe. However, because of the dilemma between the two, Xianxia had a chance to breathe. Seeing the sudden change of the formation, countless stars came towards her. Xianxia didn't know that it was Zuyun who took action. She didn't hold back at all. It can be said that she used up all her life's learning just to escape Zuyun's attack. Humph, wait until those three can protect me well, and then I will use the method of immortal soul to detect where you are. Xianxia was confident. Her realm was lower than hers, and she was still restricted by him. She was not afraid at all. Zuyun saw that his attack on the formation failed one after another, and he couldn't help but feel anxious. If this continued, when she met the three people in the tribulation period, it would be difficult to find another opportunity. But without him, the formation continued to fill up the spiritual stones, and gradually began to shake. No, we can't take any more risks. If we focus on one thing and lose the other, I'm afraid we won't get anything at all. He made a prompt decision, gave up killing Xianxia, and instead tried his best to replenish the spirit stones, and the formation gradually stabilized. But after all, this is not a good strategy. There will always be a time when the spirit stones will be used up, and some changes will need to occur in the formation. With a thought in his heart, he freed up one hand to squeeze the formation formula, and moved several tribulation transmitting monks who were close to the place where Fairy Red Boy and Fairy Xianxia were fighting. Sure enough, another person appeared and the fight stopped immediately. Fairy Xianxia immediately poured dirty water and shouted first, "Fellow Taoists, the Red Boy Fairy killed the Lingzun swordsman. After I find out, I'm afraid I will treat you again. Let's take advantage of the opportunity and kill him together." The red-haired female fairy was furious and yelled angrily, "You fart, it was obviously you who killed the Lingzun swordsman, how dare you complain to me first?" But as soon as she finished speaking, the Red Boy Fairy secretly felt that something was wrong. Everyone knew that Fairy Xianxia and Lingzun swordsmen came together. With their own temperament, I am afraid they would believe Fairy Xianxia more, but changing their words can only explain. He changed his cover and did not defend himself at all, but pretended to be relaxed and smiled. "Everyone knows that I have a good relationship with Sister Zhong. If you attack me, I'm afraid there will be no good end. Why don't we join forces to kill Xianxia? Wait a moment, it's easy to deal with Sister Zhong." This was exactly what he wanted. Although Xianxia's attitude towards the Red Girl Fairy was true and false, they did not dare to try it rashly. Who knows if Xianxia deliberately kept the Red Boy Fairy by his side, and could it be used for other purposes? But regardless of this, the fight turned into a confrontation. The other monks also began to wait and watch. The speed at which the stars in the array were destroyed also slowed down a lot. Zuyun breathed a sigh of relief, and the idea of killing Xianxia came to him again. But he was not in a hurry to take action, but continued to transfer the remaining monks one by one. When Fairy Xianxia noticed that there were more and more people, she suddenly remembered that Fairy Red Child seemed to appear out of thin air. In addition, the body of the Lingzun swordsman was obviously dead on the spot and no one could move it, but it also appeared suddenly. Put yourself at a disadvantage. This is obviously Zuyun doing something secretly. She was suddenly shocked and thought to herself that this boy who transformed into a god actually had so many scheming thoughts. What was the purpose of this act? After pondering for a moment, she already knew in her heart that since this kid could do whatever he wanted with this formation, she would simply break it first. Having had previous experience of breaking the formation, everyone knew how to break it. Fairy Xianxia then said, "Everyone is entering this formation again. I believe Sect Master Zhong has already said, let us continue to break the formation? Why, fellow Taoists, are you standing still?" These words broke the silence, and all the monks suddenly realized that Xianxia had really given this order, but more people began to feel annoyed. Since people like myself will be scattered everywhere, and presumably Xianxia as well, why not look for her first and kill her when she is alone? But obviously, it's a bit late at this time. The unpredictability of people's hearts was fully demonstrated at this time. No one dared to make this suggestion. It would be better if he killed him, but if he couldn't kill him, he was afraid that someone would inform him and he would be doomed by then. At least at this moment, although I feel aggrieved, I can still live well. Zuyun saw that he had temporarily slowed down the speed of destroying the formation by transferring the monks, but he did not expect that Fairy Xianxia had guessed her mind and started to break the formation again, and she felt extremely helpless. The spiritual stones are consumed very quickly, and the number has already reached thousands. What should we do? Over there, she also noticed that Xianxia met with the 3 people in the tribulation period. If she used Xianxia again, she would still be in a situation where she only cares about one thing and loses the other. If I had known earlier, instead of transferring these people, I would have transferred Xianxia. He muttered subconsciously, but an idea flashed in his mind. Transfer clock to welcome summer? At first, he only thought about killing Xianxia with his own ability, but he never thought that he could kill someone with a borrowed knife. Confidence suddenly increased in his eyes. He didn't know how Xianxia would get along with these tribulation stages, but if Xianxia alone was transferred to the gathering place of these tribulation stages, there would be a good show without even thinking. Why did Xianxia travel with the 3 people in the tribulation stage? Wasn't it because they were his backers? A flash of light suddenly flashed in Zuyun's eyes. He couldn't care less about the formation being destroyed at an extremely fast speed. With a thought in his heart, he had already pinched the formation formula in his hand. Call out. Xianxia felt an invisible force suddenly move her body. When she appeared, she was already underneath a group of tribulation cultivators. And in front of her and behind her, there were Fairy Xianxia and Fairy Red Boy who were watching with eager eyes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1263. When she saw Xianxia appear, a strange color flashed in the eyes of the Red Boy Fairy, and the Red Cloud Fairy asked, "Why is Sect Master Xian here too?" While she was talking, she had secretly pinched a ray of light. As long as she didn't find the other 3 tribulation crossing stage coming, she would immediately attack. When Xianxia found her situation, she was already very alert. It seemed that she had no ability to attack cultivators other than the 5 spiritual roots, but with the fairy light protecting her body, she could hold on for a while. Fairy Xianxia, she turned the tables, as if the 3 tribulation crossing cultivators were still behind her, and said calmly, "Why don't you destroy those stars like the other Taoist friends?" Master Xian, Fairy Xianxia did not use her spiritual consciousness and responded to Xianxia's question, "Didn't you ask me to explore the situation in this formation? I have been here for a long time and have been trapped in this formation. This formation is larger and wider than the previous formation. I can't destroy it alone." "So that's it," Xianxia smiled, "Fairy Xianxia has worked hard." She was so calm, as if she didn't know the danger at all. She turned around and smiled at the Red Boy Fairy, "Why don't you stay here too?" After the voice fell, she never thought that Fairy Xianxia would take action. A ray of light that was not as bright as thousands of stars suddenly attacked. Before the ray of light arrived, the murderous intent had already arrived and Xianxia's heart surged. Zuyun was overjoyed when he saw it. He guessed right. These tribulation crossing cultivators must want to kill Xianxia. The spiritual master swordsman was slapped into a pig's head by the 3 tribulation stage brought by Xianxia. The rest of the tribulation stage were also in danger, especially the Fairy Xianxia who was driven to the 9th floor. She must have discovered that this was the best time to kill Xianxia. Xianxia did not expect that Fairy Xianxia would be so insidious and vicious. If she was killed with such a glow, even his body protection fairy light would be difficult to resist. Seeing the glow coming, I didn't expect that the Red Boy Fairy would take action. You want to attack Sister Xianxia, you really don't take me seriously. A dark red light, like the double blood moon in the secret realm of Ascension, rose from the hands of the red boy fairy in a delicate and strange laugh, and reached Xianxia's body to meet the glow. Boom! 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 The glow collided with the red light, and the aftermath of the explosion shattered thousands of stars. The formation was shaking violently, and even Zuyun outside the formation was extremely frightened, not to mention the other cultivators who were bombarding the stars and stopped to see what was going on. Fairy Xianxia was shocked and angry. Red boy fairy, what are you doing? If we don't get rid of this girl, how can we find the immortal fate? Xianxia had already been sweating profusely, but she was safe after all. However, she was only grateful for the help of Red Boy Fairy, and did not feel any gratitude. What she thought was that Red Boy Fairy must have something to ask of her. She just giggled and said, "Xianxia, I said, how can you do anything to my sister?" Xianxia missed the first attack, and knew that it would be fruitless to attack again. What's more, this was already a fight. If she stayed and waited for the 3 tribulation stages to come, she would be the only one to die. Red Boy Fairy, I'm not done with you. Fairy Xianxia bit her silver teeth and retreated into the distance. Her figure also disappeared into the void, leaving a group of cultivators looking at each other in bewilderment. Thank you for your help, sister. I really didn't make a mistake. Xianxia pretended that nothing had happened, as if the 3 tribulation stage cultivators she relied on were still by her side. Sister Xian, you are wrong. You must have made a mistake. The face of the red boy fairy quickly turned back to her youthful appearance, but what she said made Xianxia nervous and she turned around and wanted to escape. But if the tribulation stage cultivator wanted to make a move, she would be doomed even if she was in the Mahayana stage, not to mention that she was so close to the red boy fairy at this time. A giant flaming hand came out of nowhere and swallowed Xianxia. Hee, sister has mysterious magical powers, sister really wants to have a deep exchange with you. Let's go with sister. The flame retreated, and in the laughter of the red boy fairy, Xianxia was collected into the red boy fairy's portable space magic weapon. This change was unexpected by Zuyun. I thought Xianxia would die. Unexpectedly, the red boy fairy repelled the red cloud fairy, but attacked Xianxia again. Unexpectedly, there was still a survivor. This is troublesome. Zuyun didn't expect that after so many twists and turns, Xianxia didn't die, and was captured by the red boy fairy. This might be the worst result. The red boy fairy's style of doing things is unpredictable. If she learns from Xianxia about the soul method she got from the 5 Elements Chaos Sutra, I'm afraid it will be very dangerous for her in the future. But obviously, now is not the time to think about this problem. Xianxia is not dangerous to him for the time being, so it's time to leave the demon refining tower to avoid being found by the tribulation period. Zuyun wanted to leave. There was no one in the tribulation crossing stage at the light gate. He could enter at any time and then leave in a swagger. Unexpectedly, a ray of light rushed from the inside of the formation to the outside of the formation, turning into a familiar voice, echoing in the space inside the tower. Zuyun, I am going to die. If you save my life, I will give you all my wealth. It was the red cloud fairy. He was shocked. Could it be that the red cloud fairy came out? Just when he was about to hide in the great universe world, he saw several more rays of light coming. These rays of light were not aggressive at all, but turned into voices. It turned out to be a magic that could be transmitted thousands of miles away. Zuyun stopped and heard Fairy Xianxia's pleading. Every sentence came from the bottom of her heart. She asked Zuyun to save her from the battle. How would she repay her? Words like these made Zuyun start to fall into deep thought. Xianxia can be so lawless by following 3 people in the tribulation period. If he has Fairy Xianxia, can he also be able to fake the power of a tiger? Not to mention anything else, at least he has strong helpers in the secret realm of immortal ascension. After all, he still needs to deal with the hidden danger of the Demon Moon sect. But the problem is, how to ensure that Fairy Xianxia will not hurt him. The magical powers in the tribulation stage are unbelievable, and he is still far away. There is no guarantee that Fairy Xianxia has other magical powers. If Fairy Xianxia was also trying to show him a trick, and she waited until she felt safe to attack again, the consequences would be disastrous. Especially when she witnessed the scene where Fairy Xianxia attacked and killed the Spirit Lord, Zuyun had to deal with it carefully. After all, I have a fire incarnation, which does leave a way out, so I might as well take a gamble. After making a decision in his heart, Zuyun passed Fairy Xianxia out of the formation without hesitation. I went out into battle. Fairy Xianxia couldn't believe it when she found that there was no longer void around her. She thought that if the Red Boy Fairy protected Xianxia Zhouquan, then she would have nowhere to go in the formation and would undoubtedly die. Only in desperation did she compromise and seek peace with the idea of giving it a try, using the method of Xiaoguang's sound transmission. Zuyun helps. I didn't expect it to actually come out. Zuyun, thank you. When she came back to her senses, she saw a figure of Yun Danfengking sitting cross-legged outside the formation, throwing a spiritual stone into the formation from time to time. No need to thank me, you just need to remember your promise. Zuyun was trying to be mysterious, as if he didn't take her period of tribulation into consideration at all. He also knows that if he wants to make good use of this person, he must improve himself. If you show cowardice, you have lost the bet. I, Xianxia, have always said what I say, and I can swear by my heart. After saying that, Xianxia actually raised 3 fingers and made an oath of heaven to the sky. Zuyun smiled contemptuously and said lightly, Xianxia, you don't want to act. This secret realm of immortality is a fairy land from outside the sky. Heaven has no control over it. The oaths made here are of no use. Fairy Xianxia's face changed and she said in shock, how do you know? This was indeed her little thought. Being seen through by Zuyun was tantamount to being slapped in the face. All the previous promises were even more ridiculous than jokes. If in the past, someone had embarrassed her, she would have dared to fight with someone like the Red Boy Fairy. But she couldn't see through Zuyun, who was in the stage of becoming a god. How do I know? Zuyun laughed, threw a few more spiritual stones into the formation, and stood up, because I have the inheritance of the formation immortal in this fairy tower. You got the inheritance. Fairy Xianxia was shocked again. How could he be favored by the formation immortal in the stage of becoming a god? Seemingly seeing through Fairy Xianxia's doubts, Zuyun explained without changing his expression, because I am the one with the highest attainments in the formation Dao among all of you. If the formation immortal doesn't choose me, how can it be possible for him to choose you? The more he belittles others and promotes himself, the more he is able to scare Fairy Xianxia. Zuyun's move really revealed the weakness in her heart. Facing Zuyun, her aura seemed to be weak. Even if Zuyun walked leisurely and walked in front of her, Fairy Xianxia could not even think of resisting. Here, I, Zuyun, don't believe in heaven, I only believe in myself. And you, if you want me to believe in you, you have only one choice. Zuyun nodded slightly and said proudly. Fairy Xianxia's face gradually turned pale, and her pretty girl-like face seemed to be sick. Only the cherry lips bitten by her teeth were even more bloody, which fully showed the humiliation she felt in her heart. Don't worry, Zuyun knew that if he was too domineering, it would make Fairy Xianxia jump over the wall in a hurry. Rabbits will bite people when they are anxious, let alone such a strong person who has overcome the tribulation. He took a step back and said, wait until the secret realm of ascension to immortality. When it's over, I'll let you go. From now on, we will no longer have anything to do with each other. What do you think? Fairy Xianxia's face was suddenly filled with surprise, and she said, "If I follow you as a slave, I will allow you to run amok in the spiritual world." Zuyun laughed again, "I have the inheritance of the formation immortal. If I go out to the formation, I must practice hard in seclusion and understand the formation. What if you follow me and harm me? Even if you don't harm me, you are already a strong person who has overcome the tribulation. What if I get an immortal connection with you in this secret realm, and when you get out, you will cause a catastrophe and ascend to the immortal world, so what? No matter which ending it is, for me, I can only control you in the secret realm of ascension. There is no need to take such a big risk." Such straightforward words restored some color to Fairy Xianxia's face. She took a deep breath and said, "I believe you, so just come." After saying that, she lowered her guard, and a ray of light spread out between her eyebrows. As long as Zuyun released a trace of his soul, it would go straight into the depths of Zi mansion. At that time, as long as Zuyun makes a thought, Fairy Xianxia will die immediately, just like the light of the sword left by the Lingzun swordsman in his Zi mansion. But who would have thought that as soon as Zuyun moved, another sudden change occurred. The immortal soul hammer actually took the lead and flew out from between his eyebrows, slamming into Fairy Xianxia's Zi mansion. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1264. Dang. 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 The familiar sound of hammering came, but the scene this time was completely different. Before, it was the soul of the wood incarnation that was constantly hammered by the hammer. But this time, it was Zuyun who saw with his own eyes that the soul of the Fairy Xianxia was smashed with cracks. The heart-wrenching sound came out hysterically, but it could not cover the loud sound of the hammer. Until the phantom in the purple palace of the Fairy Xianxia was smashed into pieces, it was condensed again, and it had been hammered 1,000 times. Zuyun didn't count, because what shocked him more was the new soul of the Fairy Xianxia. There was a hammer mark between the eyebrows. Like the crescent tumor of the Demon Moon sect. "What did you do to me?" The voice of the Fairy Xianxia was trembling, full of fear. Not only was she completely unable to resist, but Zuyun was only in the God transformation stage. When did the God transformation stage bully her, a tribulation stage, like this? "I didn't do anything." At this point, Zuyun couldn't say that he didn't know. Of course, he wouldn't have any idea before he understood why it happened. "You." Fairy Xianxia hesitated to speak. Not only did she not feel the changes in her body, but she also found that her soul became stronger. "That's it?" Zuyun retracted his gaze, and the scene changed suddenly. His face changed slightly. It seemed that he had been there for a long time, but it seemed that only a breath of time had passed. Fairy Xianxia's consciousness also withdrew from the purple mansion. She subconsciously touched her forehead. Fortunately, there was no mark on her body. Zuyun saw it, and felt secretly amused for no reason in his heart, as if he had left her with some kind of shadow. It couldn't be better. "Let's go, let them stay here and fight each other." Zuyun whispered softly without saying anything, pinched the formation formula in his hand, and sent Fairy Xianxia into the formation, and appeared at the light gate. Fairy Xianxia looked at the familiar void, and when Zuyun appeared, she stepped into the light gate. They walked straight down, and soon left the demon refining tower. There were many cultivators outside. After discovering the tower, they all thought they had discovered the inheritance of immortals, and they continued to rush here. Zuyun narrowed his eyes. He did not feel the existence of his fire incarnation. He thought he had found the soul transferring grass and went far away with Xiu or left. But he did not find Zhu Feng, which made him very confused. With his understanding of Zhu Feng, how could he give up the demon refining tower? But after thinking about it for a while, he was relieved. Maybe Zhu Feng felt that he could not take back the tower for a while, So he simply left and went to other places to look for treasures. Zoo, Mr. Zoo, where are we going now? Fairy Xianxia wanted to call his name directly, but when the words came to her lips, she changed her words. Zuyun collected his thoughts, pondered for a moment, and said, "Do you know the Demon Moon sect? The Demon Moon sect in the Nine Netherworld? I know, but I haven't paid too much attention to it. They have been lonely for a long time. Then have you learned about the Ascension Secret Realm?" Zuyun asked again. With the realm of Fairy Xianxia, she may have experienced the opening of the Ascension Secret Realm many times. I only know that it opens once every 1,000 years, and it is still after the Ascension platform. I don't know about the others. The Ascension Secret Realm seems to be different every time. Maybe it is also related to my misremembering. Fairy Xianxia's words did not provide any effective information, which made Zuyun entangled in whether to find a way to leave or continue to stay in the secret realm. According to Yayuan, the Ascension Secret Realm is actually a conspiracy. After thinking about it, he decided to stay for the time being. In addition to continuing to look for the so-called immortal inheritance, he can also explore the secret of the Demon Moon sect. It's not that he is afraid of anything else, but after all, he has made enemies with the Demon Moon section. If the Demon Moon sect really gets the immortal inheritance here, I am afraid that he will also leave some hidden dangers. Now that there is a person in the tribulation stage who listens to his orders, it is not to say that he is taking advantage of the power of others, but at least it will be much more convenient. Besides, he also promised Fairy Xianxia that they would go their separate ways after leaving the secret realm. In such matters, he always keeps his word. Go over there and take a look, but you need to restrain your strength and avoid unnecessary troubles. He did not have an accurate understanding of Fairy Xianxia's strength. This Ascension Secret Realm has no restrictions and may attract tribulation stage people from the entire spiritual world. It would be okay to meet one person, but if there are 3 or 5 people, it would be very inappropriate if there is a conflict. Okay. Fairy Xianxia did not have any objections, but she moved in her heart, and the tribulation stage aura on her body quickly faded, and soon she became the same as Zuyun in the spiritualization stage. But Zuyun thought again, stretched out his hand to draw a talisman of changing heaven and earth, and turned Fairy Xianxia into Zhouruyu's appearance. Is this a spiritual talisman? Fairy Xianxia touched her face, a little surprised. Among these orthodox cultivators, except for chi refining, all other practices are unorthodox, including alchemy and weapon refining. Even sword and knife cultivation are treated equally by them. Yes, spiritual talismans. Zuyun smiled and said, I didn't say that I don't know the way of talismans. Fairy Xianxia asked curiously, did you break through to the spiritualization stage through the way of arrays or the way of talismans? Me? I also entered the Dao through chi refining. Do I not need to learn the way of arrays and the way of talismans? No, that's not what I meant. Fairy Xianxia shook her head and said, it is always easier to practice if you specialize in one path. Generally speaking, it is difficult to achieve the great path with these paths, and they are even much worse than some talents. Loose cultivation is also much more difficult. Look, there are sects like Balian sect and Jiden sect in the spiritual world, but how many of them can achieve the great Dao? Hearing the talk about Jidan sect, Zuyun's eyes flashed with light and he asked, then how much do you know about Jidan section? Jidan sect. Fairy Xianxia was a little confused as to why Zuyun always asked him about the situation of the sect's power, but since he asked, he couldn't help but tell her, so she said, Jidan sect is just a small sect that makes a living by refining alchemy. Their alchemy skills are extraordinary, but that's all. If Qin Tianji hadn't settled in their sect as a guest, I'm afraid their name wouldn't be so famous among the monks in the spiritual world as shop selling elixirs. Hearing this, Zuyun understood in his heart that even Fairy Xianxia only knew one side of the tribulation period. I am afraid that the Jidan sect is hiding very deep. the collusion with the Five Elements sect, and the valley that is very similar to Xianxia. Perhaps, Jidan sect also has an inseparable relationship with the fairy world. After sighing slightly, Zuyun chose a direction and started moving forward. Fairy Xianxia thought that Zuyun didn't get the answer she wanted from her, so she hurriedly chased after him and said, "Master Zhu, the red boy fairy has a close relationship with the Jidan section, maybe he knows something." Oh. Zuyun stopped for a moment, which was a bit surprising. He nodded to show that he understood and continued to move forward. Fairy Xianxia was stunned by such a bland reaction, but she did not dare to say any more and followed closely. When the two of them were gone, Zhu Feng's figure suddenly came out from behind the demon refining tower. "Brother, big brother, it's not that I don't listen to you, but everyone has their own way of immortality. I will not follow your arrangements. The demon refining tower is my way. No matter how dangerous it is, I will go on. Just like I suddenly appeared in the secret realm of Xianxia and gave you a surprise." After that, he opened the bronze door and stepped into the demon refining tower again under the attention of some new monks. While walking and chatting with Fairy Xianxia, Zuyun's understanding of the spiritual world deepened a lot. In his opinion, there is no difference between this and the mortal world. This made him start to wonder if the world of immortality was the same, so what was the point of him constantly practicing and crossing different interfaces? Is it really just to pursue immortality? It seems like someone is following us. Just as Zuyun was immersed in his thoughts, Fairy Xianxia suddenly spoke. "Did you use your spiritual sense?" Zuyun frowned and asked immediately. "Don't worry, young master, this is just my spiritual awakening during the tribulation period." Fairy Xianxia quickly explained that since Zuyun had asked her to disguise before, she would naturally not use her spiritual sense indiscriminately to disrupt Zuyun's plan. Zuyun also understood. He also had spiritual sense, but it was not as strong as in the tribulation stage, and he didn't find anyone following him. "Where are they? How many people are there? Are you sure they are following us?" Zuyun felt that the two of them were so low-key and didn't even fly through the air, so they shouldn't attract other people's attention. Even the revealed realm is only at the stage of divine transformation. The monks below him dare not disturb him, and the monks above him are not too interested. Right behind us, several miles away. Their speed is consistent with ours. Fairy Xianxia closed her eyes again, felt it carefully, then opened her eyes again and said, "Can you know their cultivation level?" Zuyun asked again. "Without spiritual consciousness and soul, there is nothing you can do." When Fairy Xianxia said this, she couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. She had not experienced a feeling that she could not control for a long time. Since they haven't caught up, we don't need to give any excuses for the time being. Let's go our own way. Zuyun shook his head, but who would have thought that an hour later, the people behind him suddenly accelerated their speed, bypassed them, and stopped in front of them. Several monks were all dressed in black. One of them took a step forward and said coldly, "The forbidden area ahead, two fellow Taoists, please go around it." Fairy Xianxia narrowed her eyes and was about to teach them a lesson, but she suddenly realized that she had to obey Zuyun's orders now, but she held it back forcibly. She glanced at Zuyun secretly, but saw that he had a solemn look on his face. It's possible to take action. Isn't he crazy? He wants to do it himself while leaving my tribulation period unused. Fairy Xianxia was extremely surprised and didn't understand Zuyun's thoughts, and his voice also sounded. "Sorry, we are leaving now, please forgive me." After saying that, he turned around and left without any hesitation. After taking 2 steps, he found that Fairy Xianxia was still standing there, so he whispered, "Aren't you leaving yet? I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1265. Mr. Zhu, why do you want to give in? Fairy Chixia was puzzled. These people were not very strong. The one who spoke was only in the spiritualization stage, and the one who did not speak was in the void refining stage. But for her, it made no difference to kill them all in one breath. Zuyun smiled faintly and said, "They are from the Demon Moon sect." When the man in black spoke, he raised his head slightly. At that angle, Zuyun saw a crescent tumor. Demon Moon sect? Fairy Chixia glanced over there and said, "Is it the Demon Moon sect that Master Zhu asked about earlier?" "Yes," Zuyun said with a smile, "it's not that we can't kill them, but we can't kill them for the time being. Maybe we can find something by following them." Fairy Chixia didn't understand the key, but she also knew that Zuyun had a plan in mind, so she said, "Master Zhu means that we should follow them first to see what they do." Zuyun didn't say anything, but chuckled and drew an invisibility talisman and pasted it on Fairy Chixia's forehead. In an instant, her figure was hidden. Then, Zuyun also drew one for himself. There are many ways to become invisible, and Fairy Chixia has mastered several of them, but none of them can be as calm as Zuyun. "Master Zhu, what are the requirements for this talisman?" "Just don't use your spiritual power recklessly, otherwise you will be easily discovered. But since you are in the tribulation stage, there may be some differences, and you need to master it yourself." "Master Zhu, rest assured, Chixia will definitely do as you say." The longer she traveled with Zuyun, the more she found that she could not see through Zuyun. Although he was only in the spiritualization stage, his behavior was extremely sophisticated. In addition, the shock of the immortal soul hammer in her purple mansion made Fairy Chixia curious and cautious about Zuyun. Zuyun nodded. He already believed that Fairy Chixia would have such an attitude. When needed, a tribulation stage would definitely help him out of the crisis. Since someone from the Demon Moon sect stopped them here, does that mean that if they go further, they will reach the Moon Demon ruins? The Ascension secret realm is related to the Immortal realm, but the Immortal realm is not only about immortals, but also demons. This is what Nujiao told him. The two of them followed the original path back to the place where they were stopped before. After observing the footsteps on the ground for a while, they walked towards that direction again without haste. An hour later, they saw many cultivators in black, but the highest was only in the nascent soul stage. "Mr. Zhu, it's different from the one who stopped us." Zuyun said, "I know, the realm is different." Fairy Chixia was a little embarrassed. She subconsciously wanted to show off so as to win Zuyun's favor, but she almost ignored this problem. At such a close distance, the spiritualization stage can naturally feel the cultivators below his realm. "Then Mr. Zhu, shall we continue to move forward?" These black-clothed people seemed to be on patrol, walking back and forth without any pattern, and Fairy Chixia asked inquiringly. "Let's wait and see, it's not that simple." Fairy Chixia followed up, "Did they discover the immortal inheritance? But with such a big show, aren't they afraid of being discovered by other powerful cultivators?" "Of course they are afraid," Zuyun pondered for a moment, and said, "Perhaps, this is just trying to cover up something, we'll know after a while." Hearing Zuyun say this, Fairy Chixia couldn't continue to speak, so she could only follow Zuyun and watch quietly. For a long time, Zuyun frowned, because he found the pattern of these people's walking, and remembered it all in his mind. It seems to be an unknown formation, which seems to cater to the formation of the yin-yang formation, but it is a little different. It seems to be talking to himself, but it seems to be talking to Fairy Chixia. Fairy Chixia looked at those cultivators carefully, but she didn't understand anything. She couldn't help but wonder in her heart, did Zuyun really inherit the formation immortal? At this time, several more cultivators suddenly flew over from the front, that is, behind these cultivators. After a few stern words, the cultivators followed and left. "They are a little strange." In an instant, there was no one here. Fairy Chixia always felt that something was wrong and could only use the word strange. It's not strange, because the people who flew out were walking in formation steps, so they didn't come straight, but came around. Zuyun saw it clearly, and in his mind, there was the route that more than 10 cultivators had walked. After connecting them, a strange formation diagram was formed. And the trajectories of the later cultivators just matched. In other words, there is a formation here. Since it is a formation, can you break it? Fairy Chixia's eyes lit up and looked at Zuyun. Since the so-called Demon Moon sect made such a big fuss, it must be that there is an extremely unusual immortal inheritance here. Since she came to the secret realm of ascension, she naturally came to find the immortal fate. Although the encounter with Zuyun was a bit unexpected, it would be great if it happened. It wouldn't be a wasted trip. It's not difficult to break it by force, but what's difficult is what will happen after it's broken. Zuyun looked towards Fairy Chixia calmly, but in fact he couldn't see anything. After all, his realm was still weaker than Fairy Chixia. But didn't Master Zu inherit the inheritance of the formation fairy? Hearing the doubts in the words, Zuyun touched his nose embarrassedly. This was a lie to deceive Fairy Chixia at the beginning. Unexpectedly, the other party believed it now, so he said, "The inheritance of the formation immortal is not a temporary thing. I can take care of everything now. After all, I am only in the stage of becoming a god. However, as long as I understand the method of this formation, it should not be difficult. It is just a matter of spending more time." Fairy Chixia didn't know what Zuyun was thinking, but she also helped with advice, saying, "Master Zu, if time passes, it won't be our turn to inherit the immortals in this formation. Chixia has a plan, why don't you listen to it? You say." Chixia has somewhat understood some of the characteristics of the Dozwan star shifting formation. Since it can continuously replenish the spirit stones, can it be possible to set up a larger formation to include this formation, and then use the spirit stones and stars in the formation? How about breaking this formation? In this way, even if there is something weird in this formation, it won't hurt you or me. You. Zuyun smiled bitterly and said, "The method sounds feasible, but in practice, it is not that simple. We have not found out how big the Demon Moon sect's formation is. If we set up the formation rashly, it would be better if we did not surround it. Well, if you can't encircle it, you'll lose the money instead." "Young master, what you mean is that you are short of spiritual stones." Fairy Chixia heard what was going on behind the scenes and said, "Chixia has some wealth these years. I wonder if 50,000 high-grade spiritual stones are enough." 50,000. Zuyun was shocked now. He had taken 2 times from Lingzun swordsman, totaling 30,000 spirit stones, but he had used more than 20,000. Zuyun did not intend to use the remaining ones randomly, but put them on his body. Be prepared for emergencies. When he was in the mortal world, he suffered enough without the spiritual stone. Unexpectedly, Fairy Chixia asked for 50,000, which was really astonishing. By the way, before Zuyun could react, Fairy Chixia said as if she had remembered something, previously in the formation, after the Lingzun swordsman died, the young master also escaped from the formation, and Chixia killed the Lingzun swordsman. I also took out his ring. According to my understanding of him, there are at least 100,000 spirit stones in it." Zuyun opened his mouth wide and could not calm down for a long time. If this is the case, you can really try the method mentioned by Fairy Chixia. However, the only worry is that if the formation is set up, it will be discovered by the monks of the Demon Moon sect or the monks who will pass by here later. After careful consideration, Zuyun decided to do it. "Chixia, you patrol the area. If outsiders come, drive them away. If there are people from the Demon Moon sect, don't kill them indiscriminately, so as not to scare the snakes. Just pretend to be driven away by them." Zuyun could only do this to deal with external forces, but he also had ways to deal with formations. After giving the instructions, Zuyun removed the invisibility talisman and got the ring of the Spirit Master Swordsman in his hand. The soul mark on it had been erased by Xianxia and became an ownerless thing. He could easily explore it and found that the spirit sword was removed from it. There is not much else besides the stone. His heart condensed, and his body swayed. In an instant, 4 incarnations walked out of his body, and each took 20,000 spirit stones, drew invisibility charms on each, and began to set up formations. The incarnations are at such a close distance, with the same minds and thoughts, and setting up a formation, half the effort is more than twice the result. Coupled with the fact that the main body controls the overall situation, the formation speed is extremely fast, and Zuyun feels the magical effect of the incarnation for the first time. On the side, Fairy Xianxia was completely stunned, with a face full of disbelief. He actually has 4 incarnations. What kind of technique is he practicing? If he knew that Zuyun had 5 incarnations, he would probably think of the 5 Elements sect and would inevitably not be associated with Xianxia. But it's such a coincidence. With the Spirit Stone as his strength, Zuyun didn't know how to save anything. Not only did he set up the star-moving formation, he also applied all the changes he had imagined in the formation. Anyway, the formation will be broken later, and it will be broken by brute force. If there is a slight oversight, it will not be a big problem. As time went by, Fairy Xianxia also met many monks, some from outside and some from the Demon Moon sect. But fortunately, Zuyun had given instructions a long time ago, and Fairy Xianxia followed his instructions, seducing people who should be seduced and deceiving people who should be deceived. Methodically, by the time the formation was completely set up, 2 hours had passed and 80,000 high-grade spiritual stones had been spent. This is truly the most extravagant formation. All the incarnations returned to the main body. Zuyun looked at the vast formation and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Fairy Xianxia was also shocked again. She spent 80,000 high-grade spiritual stones in a stage of transformation without even blinking. It really opened her eyes. Just when Zuyun was about to activate the formation, there was a sudden change in the sky. I saw that the 2 blood moons that had been hanging began to darken in color. The blood red turned to deep red, and then dark red again, revealing an extremely strange look. In the air, the spiritual power began to fade, and from under the ground, streaks of demonic energy slowly began to rise, from the solace of the feet to the ankles, to the knees, to the waist, as if water was flooding the Golden Mountain, trying to engulf everyone. Generally. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1266. This sudden change caught neither Zuyun nor Fairy Xianxia by surprise. The strangest thing about the Ascension secret realm is the 2 blood moons. Now the red light is rising. Could it be that there is a change in the secret realm? Zuyun remembered that when the wood avatar laid the 9 transformations and 9 suns formation, it seemed to have attracted the power of the blood moon in the sky when the formation was completed. However, when looking out from the inside of the formation, there was no obvious movement. Could it be a problem with the formation of the Demon Moon sect? Zuyun muttered in a low voice, but saw that Fairy Xianxia had already rushed over and said seriously, "Mr. Zhu, the change has come. I'm afraid it's too late. Should we break the strange formation first?" Okay. Zuyun would not blindly follow Fairy Xianxia because she was in the tribulation crossing stage. He had his own considerations. It was nothing more than that the Dozhuan Xinyi formation included the strange formation of the entire Demon Moon section. If the change attracted people, the tens of thousands of spirit stones in this formation would be wasted. Thinking of this, Zuyun pinched the array formula, and countless spirit stones suddenly glowed and smashed towards the strange array. Swish! 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 The sound of breaking through the air reached the ears of the two people. It was the first time that Fairy Xianxia saw the Xianxia array being activated outside. What she saw was nothing more than the flying of spirit stones. It was commonplace, but when she was in the array, she could not forget the power. All this was done by this kid in the god transformation stage. Fairy Xianxia could not help but look over. She felt that the other party could obviously kill her but did not kill her. Was it his nature, or he got the inheritance of the array fairy, and thought that killing himself was like killing a chicken? Just when Fairy Xianxia thought that these spirit stones could stir up the strange array and attack them, who were in the tribulation stage, in the array easily, an accident happened again. These spirit stones seemed to hit the softest object and were all bounced out. The light flickered, and the spirit stones scattered. Under the cover of the blood moon, they fell to the ground and lost all their light. There is something strange. Even Zuyun didn't need to say it, Fairy Xianxia also saw it. Even the formation of the formation fairy couldn't deal with it, which showed how strange the strange formation was. Be quiet. Zuyun glanced at Fairy Xianxia indifferently, feeling distressed. When he started the formation, he used the breaking void spirit eye technique. Through his own formation, he discovered the opponent's formation power flow, and opened a sky gate, the formation gate facing the sky. The light of the blood moon easily shone into the formation and merged into the formation pattern. This blood moon light regarded Zuyun's Dozuan formation as nothing. It's an unexpected gain. Zuyun was also strange in his heart. I found a way to crack my formation. After self-deprecating, he tightened his mind and continued to watch the strange formation under the flow of the blood moon power, ejecting all the spirit stones. But in a moment, the ground was scattered with gray and white stones that had been depleted of spiritual power and looked like ordinary things. Mr. Zhu, look. The formation was destroyed, and the strange formation was exposed. The dark red and semi-transparent formation wall wrapped the whole side inside, but the outline of a city could be seen faintly. Even the red cloud fairy, who did not use the broken ruins spirit eye technique, could see it, which explains something. Moon Demon Ruins. Zuyun uttered 4 words lightly. What? Fairy Xianxia was surprised by the sudden appearance of the city, but did not hear what Zuyun said clearly. Ruins, the ruins of a city. Zuyun repeated it once and added an explanation. Fairy Xianxia exclaimed, why do I see a brand new city? Zuyun was stunned, and withdrew the broken void spirit eye technique, and the ruins really turned into a city. Even the formation wall disappeared. But what has not changed is the 2 blood moons. Mr. Zhu, there must be a fairy treasure here. Although it is strange, but... Fairy Xianxia was breathing rapidly. Knowing that Zuyun would not kill her, she naturally wanted to find treasure again. It's not that easy. Let's wait and see. I believe that there will be cultivators who will be attracted by the strange phenomenon here. It is not a good thing to walk in front. The breaking void spirit eye technique can break all illusions. Perhaps what he saw is the truth. In this case, this must be the Moon Demon Ruins. Not only is it the work of the Demon Moon sect, but it may also be dangerous. Zuyun drew the invisibility talisman again and stood in the same place as Fairy Xianxia. I think that with such a strange phenomenon in front of him, ordinary cultivators who come here will not pay attention. Sure enough, in just one stick of incense, several figures flew by. 3 Mahayana cultivators, 2 men and 1 woman. Quick, quick, we didn't find anyone along the way. Although this strange phenomenon is weird, there must be a fairy treasure coming out. That's right, even if this fairy treasure is not righteous, I want to get it. Cultivating immortals is against the will of heaven, who cares whether the fairy treasure is righteous or evil? The 3 of them said something, flew low, and passed by Zuyun and the others. After a while, several people flew by one after another. There are all kinds of realms. As strong as the tribulation, as weak as the building period. This makes Zuyun more certain that this moon demon ruins may require more people to complete their conspiracy. As time goes by, more and more people come, just like when the formation outside the demon refining tower was broken, countless people came one after another. But it has never been seen that anyone will come out from the direction of the moon demon formation. Xianxia, are you really sure you want to enter that formation? Zuyun asked. Mr. Zhu, what are you doing here if you don't want to find treasure? Spiritual herbs and herbs are not urgently needed. Only this kind of immortal fate is what we are looking for. Fairy Xianxia was secretly annoyed. You have inherited the formation fairy, so you naturally don't care too much. But she didn't dare to say it openly. Fortunately, she always felt that Zuyun would not kill her. There was a little offense in this statement. But for the immortal fate, she was willing to take the risk. If Zuyun really didn't want to go at all, he wouldn't wait here with her. It's okay to go, but as before, you suppress your breath and your realm is the same as mine. Don't worry, Xianxia knows it. Fairy Xianxia was overjoyed. Just as she was about to show up, she saw a fiery red light running towards her. Red boy fairy. Zuyun and Fairy Xianxia were both shocked. Zuyun saw with his own eyes that the red boy fairy turned against Xianxia. Although he did not kill her, he took her away. Fairy Xianxia did not know about the scene and thought that she was with Xianxia. Mr. Zhu, she also went to this moon demon city. Will she? Hearing this worried voice, Zuyun smiled calmly and said, don't panic. Isn't there a talisman for changing the world? She won't recognize you. Fairy Xianxia immediately understood and subconsciously touched her face. She remembered what Zuyun said, that as long as they did not use their spiritual consciousness and spiritual power recklessly, no one would pay attention to the two of them in the spiritualization stage. Thinking of this, she was relieved and said, the red boy fairy seems to be injured. Should we? Not for the time being. Zuyun actually wanted to kill her and get rid of it once and for all, but he didn't know where Xianxia was taken. He had the experience of Mu Qingzhen being thrown to the bottom of the volcano and still alive. Unless he saw the death with his own eyes, Zuyun would never believe it. But Fairy Xianxia thought that Zuyun didn't want to cause trouble and was afraid of alerting the enemy, so she suppressed her anger, removed the invisibility talisman, and walked towards the city transformed by the moon demon ruins. Have you noticed that the closer you are, the more obvious the red light on your body becomes? Fairy Xianxia was thinking about the fairy weapon, but Zuyun found the problem. Is there any? She looked up at the sky and didn't feel any difference. Of course there is, Zuyun said with a deep look, looking at the city not far away. You carefully remember the red color at this time, and compare it again when you get to the city. Fairy Xianxia also cheered up. Since he didn't say to return by the original route, Zuyun's request was a trivial matter. The two of them walked slowly and were out of place among the cultivators who were running towards this side. Every cultivator had eager eyes, wishing that he could step over with one foot and seize the fairy treasure. Only they were so slow that it seemed like they were taking a walk. But some powerful people, after finding that they were only in the god transformation stage, no longer thought about it. They stopped only when they reached the city gate. The city gate was the formation gate. A magnificent city appeared before them. It was bright, no different from the outside world. Under the cover of the dark red light, it looked more like a refuge after a natural disaster. Fairy Xianxia remembered what Zuyun had said to her before, and raised her hand slightly. Her white wrist was actually red and purple. It's really different. She whispered to Zuyun, and waited for Zuyun to give the order to enter the city gate together. Zuyun nodded slightly and said, I hope you are ready. What? Fairy Xianxia had not yet understood what Zuyun meant, but she saw Zuyun disappear in front of her eyes, and he had obviously entered the city. She hurried to catch up, only to feel a flash in front of her eyes, and the whole person was stunned. The magnificent city seen from the outside was really a ruin after entering. The dilapidated earthen walls were mottled with the marks of countless years, and the scattered dust and the yellow sand on the ground mixed together, making it look like an ancient city buried in the desert for thousands of years. Where are the people? Fairy Xianxia suddenly woke up and looked at Zuyun, who was very calm beside her, with a look of fear. He seemed to know everything and had said before that this was a ruin. Those people entered the ruins just like us. Zuyun's words made Fairy Xianxia confused. She didn't count them carefully, but at least thousands of people rushed into the city before them, not to mention whether there were other array gates in the ruins. But at this time, no one could be seen. Mr. Zhu, have you seen through this array? Facing the unknown weirdness, Zuyun's calmness made Fairy Xianxia suddenly feel a little calm. It must be so. Mr. Zhu must have seen through the array, so he knew that this was a ruin, and he had such a calm expression. But who would have thought that Zuyun chuckled and said, I haven't seen through it, and I can't see through it. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1267. Isn't this what you wanted to come? Why are you afraid again? Zuyun turned his head when he found that the people around him had not moved. Fairy Xianxia's lips moved slightly, but she said nothing. She wanted to come, but she didn't expect this place to be so weird. Let's go, it's already here, we just need to get out early. Although Zuyun did not fully understand the formation, the moment he entered the formation, he understood that the blood moon was the power of the moonlight cultivated by the demon moon sect. It should just be that the secret method they used was too mysterious. As long as I can make Fairy Xianxia relax, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with her. What he was more interested in was just this formation. Breaking through an array that he has never understood before will also improve his attainments in the array. It was also because he felt that there was little danger here that he entered it. Otherwise, given him 100 courages, Zuyun would not take the risk. Fairy Xianxia was like a follower, following Zuyun closely. They walked among the ruins, passing through the streets, making their feet rustle. What do you think of this place? Zuyun's knowledge in the spiritual world is not extensive, so he still needs to ask Fairy Xianxia. If the ruins are restored to their original state, they will be different from the monk cities in the spiritual world, so this should be what is left of the fairy world. Fairy Xianxia has no doubt about the secret realm of Xianxian. It is not surprising that she has such preconceptions. But Zuyun got the answer he wanted. The demon moon sect is just an ordinary demon sect in the spiritual world. If he wants to forge any magical miracles, there will naturally be traces to follow. But Fairy Xianxia still saw the difference. Let's keep walking. If we find nothing more, we should leave. Zuyun used the shattering void spirit eye technique along the way. No one knew that he was following the formation patterns. Under the yellow sand, there are actually dark red lines, just like the blood vessels in the human body, and the bloody power of the moon is still swimming around. Leave. Fairy Xianxia was stunned. Yes, if you don't leave, is it possible to stay here? Zuyun asked rhetorically. Fairy Xianxia choked for words. After a while he said, what about the immortal treasure? Who said there is a fairy treasure here? Zuyun was dumbfounded and said, look, is there anything like an immortal treasure here? He still had something to say. If they had not followed the formation pattern, they would have been lost in the moon demon ruins. And there may be treasures to be found in the real moon demon ruins. However, after the demon moon sect borrows the power of the blood moon, it may not be that simple. It was Zuyun who saw through this and thought of taking Fairy Xianxia out. At the same time, the red girl fairy was nowhere to be found, and she must have been trapped in it. Zuyun didn't fully understand this formation, so he didn't dare to enter rashly. Besides, he wasn't completely sure about dealing with the red girl fairy. But I felt nervous walking here, but when it came to going out, Fairy Xianxia felt a little disappointed. Zuyun chuckled and said, "This secret realm of immortality has immortal inheritance in more than one place. How about we go to other places to check it out? Then, I'll listen to Mr. Zhu." Fairy Xianxia bit her lip and agreed, there was nothing she could do. Following Zuyun, the two walked out of the formation connected to the Moon Demon ruins without experiencing any accidents. The scene changed, and they could still see many monks rushing towards this place. When they saw them coming out of the formation, they couldn't help but show contempt. They were so cowardly and dared to come to hunt for treasures. The two of them ignored these glances. Only when they actually entered the ruins did they feel that the silence inside was a bit scary. Until the two of them left, there was an altar in the center of the ruins. Several men in black were all staring at a stone tablet. Miraculously, the stone tablet actually showed the departing figures of the two people. Sect Master, those two people were not lost in the ruins. Could it be? An old voice sounded, full of doubts, but he hesitated to speak. It doesn't matter. Thousands of monks have already entered the ruins, and there are still several who have passed through the tribulation stage. If it weren't for the immortal tower that trapped many people, I'm afraid we wouldn't have to wait so long. It's better that the sect leader can see clearly. I'm ashamed of myself. The old man bowed, as did several men in black who had not spoken. The sect leader continued, "We have been waiting for so many years, and there is no shortage of time. When the number of people is enough, the memory of the sect leader's 9th generation will come back again. With the 9th generation of magic power completed, our Demon Moon sect will no longer be invincible against this in the spirit world. This secret realm of immortality will become exclusive to our Demon Moon sect and can be opened at any time. It's no problem to achieve immortality." If Zuyun heard this, he would definitely be shocked. The 9 generations demonic skills that Zhu Feng learned from Wu Jidao actually came from the demonic moon sect. The two of them returned along the original path, but both Zuyun and Fairy Xianxia were shocked that the demon refining tower was missing. "Mr. Zhu, the fairy tower disappeared for no reason. Is it related to you?" Fairy Xianxia thought that Zuyun had taken the tower away when she wasn't paying attention. After all, it was he who had inherited the fairy tower. "I just got the inheritance of the formation, but I didn't say that I got this tower as well. I'm not that capable yet." He shook his head and thought to himself, could it be that Zhu Feng came back and took away the tower, or was it someone else? The encounter with the red boy fairy before showed that the star-shifting array had been destroyed by them, and there was nothing else in the demon refining tower. It was not difficult to leave from the 9th floor. As long as they went straight down the light gate, they could leave easily. But now he thought carefully that the red boy fairy seemed to be injured, obviously because of a fight with someone. It was definitely not done by Zhu Feng. Then, could it be that Zhu Feng used his control over the demon refining tower to cause these internal fights in the tribulation period? Thinking of this, Zuyun also frowned. Because Zhu Feng had already recultivated the devouring magic skill, based on his understanding of Zhu Feng, that kid really dared to attack the tribulation period. But if it was for cultivation, it was obviously not worth the loss. The spiritual power of the tribulation period was obviously not something Zhu Feng could eat. But the demon refining tower disappeared quietly, and apart from Zhu Feng, he really couldn't think of who did it. "If I had known, I should have told Niao a few words." After muttering a few words in his heart, Zuyun had to give up and said to Fairy Xianxia, "Let's go. Maybe the formation in the fairy tower has been inherited by me, and the fairy tower has no need to exist. It has turned into dust, right?" Zuyun had to infer this way. What he thought in his heart was that he was about to leave the Ascension secret realm. The fire avatar was gone, and he must have collected enough soul transfer grass. And the demon moon sect was obviously arranged, so it was not so easy for him to destroy it. Then Mr. Zhu, which way are we going? Fairy Chixia thought that Zuyun was going to search for treasure in other directions, and she was eager to try. Of course, it's the direction of the exit. Do you know where the exit is? Yayuan had never been to the Ascension secret realm, so he naturally didn't know the direction of the exit, but ordinary cultivators knew it. This was no longer a secret in the spirit world, and you could find out with a little inquiry. Mr. Zhu, are you leaving now? Fairy Chixia's face changed. Yes, why stay here if you don't leave, wait to die. He knew that once the Demon Moon sect completely mastered the Ascension secret realm, they would not be able to leave even if they wanted to. Wait, to die? Fairy Chixia was stunned. Is it that serious? Reach out your hand and look. Zuyun pointed to the sky. Fairy Chixia stretched out her hand in confusion. Her face changed and she exclaimed, "It's dark." Yes, it's dark. It was red and purple when we were at the gate of the formation before. But now we are so far away from the formation and have walked for several hours, but it is worse than before. So, what do you think? Fairy Chixia did not speak for a long time, and her eyes were hesitant. Zuyun said indifferently, "If you want to stay, I won't force you. Let's go our separate ways and see you later." After that, Zuyun actually strode away just for himself. But before he had walked 100 steps, Fairy Chixia caught up with him. "Mr. Zhu, I'll follow you." Zuyun raised his eyebrows and smiled softly, "You'll follow me? But after leaving the secret realm, I promised you that we'll still have to separate. Could it be that you've always wanted to stay with me?" He had agreed with Fairy Chixia before that after leaving the secret realm, they would go their separate ways. Fairy Chixia said to follow at this time. Could it be that she hadn't made it clear yet? "Mr. Zhu," Fairy Chixia said softly in response to the teasing, "you don't know the direction of the exit." Zuyun was speechless. It really was. Just like that, Zuyun and Fairy Chixia left without taking anything from the secret realm. But they had different experiences. The exit was a vortex hanging in the sky, and the two had come here a day later. There were quite a few cultivators around, but they were all below the nascent soul stage. Perhaps they were also frightened by the blood moon in the sky, or they had already gained something and were unwilling to stay here any longer. Seeing the two, they all avoided them. This was a spirit transformation stage, and they could kill them in a breath. Think about it carefully. If you leave, it will be 1,000 years before you can come back next time. Zuyun said to Fairy Chixia with a smile. "Wherever Mr. Zhu goes, I will go." After a day, Fairy Chixia became more determined. Perhaps the farther away from the dark red blood moonlight, the clearer her mind became. She stretched out her hand towards the vortex. Perhaps it was the influence of the vortex that the blood moonlight could not reach this place. Her wrist was as white as jade. "Then let's go." Zuyun soared up and rushed into the eye of the vortex. Fairy Chixia also flew up, with her clothes flying. But suddenly, many of the little cultivators below bowed to the ground. "Zhu Xian, it's Zhu Xian. Hello, Zhu Xian. Hello, Zhu Xian." Zuyun was startled and stopped. Even Fairy Chixia turned around in shock. Zuxian. How did these young cultivators know that Zuyun had inherited the immortal legacy? He was puzzled, but Zuyun took a breath of cold air. He saw a ray of golden light slowly shooting out from the tops of these people's heads and gathering towards him. "I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 1268. Master Zhu, these young monks are. When Fairy Chixia saw this, she couldn't help but murmured that during the period of her tribulation, she had received many kneels from monks, but most of them were due to her level of strength. But Zuyun was only in the stage of becoming a god at this time. Judging from Zuyun's reaction, it was clear that he was greatly shocked. There was no possibility that it was arranged in advance for them to see. In other words, these young monks didn't even know that Zuyun had inherited the inheritance of the formation Immortal, so where did the title of Zu Immortal come from? In fact, if Zuyun hadn't said that he had inherited the Immortal formation, she wouldn't have had the slightest feeling. Zuyun also knew that the changes in the Immortal Soul Hammer helped him resolve Fairy Xianxia's suspicions, but he did not expect that this would give rise to another doubt. But fortunately, this also made it impossible for Fairy Xianxia to attack him. Perhaps it's because of the relationship with Xianguang sect. Zuyun explained lightly, and then said loudly to the monks below, "Everyone, get up. There may be changes in the secret realm of Xianxian. If you can leave, you'd better leave as soon as possible." The golden light that emerged from the heads of these people disappeared into Zuyun's eyebrows in just an instant. But the strange thing is that it never stayed in Zuyun's body, and it didn't even have any interaction with the Immortal Soul Hammer. It just disappeared like that. Zuyun secretly guessed that he should have entered the Immortal Mansion or the Great Universe World. But the possibility in the Immortal Mansion will be greater. The Xianguang sect is just an alliance of casual cultivators. I guess Mr. Zhu is also very charming, so they would call him Xian. Fairy Xianxia asked out of curiosity, only to see Zuyun plunge into the whirlpool. Zuyun didn't know that Fairy Xianxia couldn't actually see these fairy lights because there were still too few people and the golden light was too weak. As for this title, it is not surprising that she calls herself Fairy Xianxia, and she is also called Fairy Red Boy, among others. Seeing Zuyun leaving, Fairy Xianxia quickly followed. The two people left separately, and the other monks quickly stood up. Zuyun talked to us and told us to leave quickly. But Zhu Xian doesn't seem too strong. Are you stupid? Zhu Xian must have come down to earth. Otherwise, if he comes in person, I'm afraid the secret realm of Xianxian will explode. That's right. Maybe Zhu Xian asked us to leave, which caused a change in the secret realm of Xianxian. Let's go quickly. After I get out, I have to offer some sticks of incense to Zhu Xian. Everyone stood up one after another, flew towards the whirlpool, and left the Ascension secret realm. But no one could see where Zuyun was going. 100 miles away, Zuyun stopped, looked at Fairy Xianxia who was still following him, and said, "What are you still following me for? Didn't we agree that the road should go up to the sky, and everyone should go to one side?" Fairy Xianxia thought for a moment and said seriously, "Master Zhu's golden soul hammer makes Xianxia and Master Zhu have an inseparable connection. Unless a disaster is imminent, Xianxia is not willing to leave." Zuyun said helplessly, "I still have things to do. If you want to find me, just go to the Xianguang section. The Xianguang sect is all casual cultivators. If they meet Xianxia, I'm afraid they will kneel down and worship like that." Xianxia is a little afraid. This answer made Zuyun couldn't help but brush his forehead, thought for a while, and said, "In that case, it would be good for you to guard the exit of the Xianxian secret realm. I want to go there and take a look." He pointed in a random direction, just to get rid of Fairy Xianxia. Staying in the secret realm of Xianxian. Fairy Xianxia was stunned. "That's right," Zuyun said with a smile, "Kunlun is so big, and I still have to go do some work, and I don't know where to meet. I'll come back to you after I've done my work, how about that?" "But Mr. Zhu, Xianxia is still in the period of transcending tribulation after all, and can help you reduce a lot of trouble." Fairy Xianxia guessed in her heart that Zuyun wanted to avoid her so that she could retreat and comprehend the formation. However, little did she know that Zuyun just wanted to see Hu Chang. It would be great if those demon kings came back. Otherwise, you have to go to Balian sect. "Don't forget," Zuyun said with a smile, I guess the entire spiritual world has entered the secret realm of immortality during the tribulation period, right? When he mentioned this, Zuyun forgot about that old guy Qin Tianji, but it just so happened that Mu Zhenjia couldn't find him at that time, and he didn't know what he wanted to do on his own. He might also be in Hu Chang's house after thinking about it. That place. What Mr. Zhu said, there is some truth in it. Then Xianxia went to hide in the secret realm of Xianxia. It happened that the talisman of changing the world had not expired yet, and Xianxia would not be recognized by familiar Taoist friends even if she kept her breath. Fairy Xianxia touched her face and knew that it was only a matter of 3 seconds. If she said it a third time and angered Zuyun, it would be bad. Zuyun smiled and said, "This talisman of changing heaven and earth will always be there if you don't want to take it away. If anything happens, go to Xianguang sect and find me. I will definitely be there." Zuyun also thought about it. If he lured Fairy Xianxia to Xianguang sect and tricked her into joining it, maybe Xianguang sect would become famous and attract more casual cultivators. He vaguely felt that those golden lights that he could not understand were inextricably linked to his future practice. Naturally, the more people, the better. Then I wish you well, see you later. Although she did not leave behind any spiritual artifacts, jade talismans, or other things used for contact, she knew Zuyun's last destination. Fairy Xianxia was polite and returned along the original path. Zuyun also breathed a sigh of relief and walked towards the distance. Fly everywhere. Kunlun is a mountain realm independent of Tianweishan, and from the memory and guess of Mu incarnation, he guessed that it was related to Tianxia. But the problem is that Tianzi Cliff is one of the passages from the eastern mortal realm to the spiritual realm. Zuyun doesn't care much about this. It's not surprising that there are 3 passages in every mortal world. But the problem is that it is in Jiden sect. He even guessed that Qin Tianji said he would be a guest, but was suddenly kicked out. This made him unable to help but think about the relationship. Hey, let's go take a look first. If we can't meet Longwu and the others, then think about what to do. For a moment, Zuyun felt that there was nothing to do, and he was afraid that he would be bored. I completely forgot that I once said that I had no time to practice because I was busy doing various things. Kunlun is a mountain range that runs east-west and can be easily identified while flying. Zuyun felt that in his impression, as long as he flew over Kunlun, he should be able to reach Huchang's valley. But this flight lasted for several days, and he did not fly out of the valley, nor did he see any living beings. That's weird. Could it be that I'm lost? When this idea came up, Zuyun felt a little ridiculous. During the flight, he never felt any abnormal fluctuations in spiritual power, which meant that there were no formations or restrictions. He came to the entrance of the Xianxian secret realm from the west. If he wanted to leave, he would naturally meet the Jiden section side. As long as you see Jiden sect, the valley from Huchang is not far away. But after flying for so long, he still didn't arrive, which made him feel a little suspicious. If you can't fly, why not just fall down and have a look? With this thought in his mind, Zuyun fell downwards. Passing through the dense clouds and mist, Zuyun soon stood in the canyon of 2 mountain ranges. Stepping on the solid ground, Zuyun had a very strange feeling, as if not in the spirit world. Go over there and have a look. If possible, fly away again and go back along the original path. With a cautious mind, Zuyun gathered away all his spiritual power and slowly walked forward. Flying above the clouds and mist, I haven't noticed anything yet. I haven't even seen any living creatures, let alone humans, not even monsters or spiritual beasts. But under the canyon, before walking far, he found a series of footprints. Stopping and thinking for a moment, he suspected that he was trapped in a large formation. Perhaps it's not necessarily an immortal formation. Looking up at the sky, he saw that it was still shrouded in clouds and mist. He subconsciously used the void-breaking spiritual eye technique, but he couldn't see through it either. It seems that Ye Yuan is right. Kunlun is a mountain from the immortal world, so people from Jidan section. He shook his head. Talking about the Jidan sect was still a bit far away at the moment. It would be more practical to see the owner of the series of footprints and ask him about the situation. Following the direction of the footprints, Zuyun took the steps of the secret of immortality without using any spiritual power. After a while, he saw a dying body at the end of the road. What made him even more unexpected was that on the back of this body, carrying a bag of wormwood on his back, he seemed to be collecting medicinal herbs, mortal. He looked carefully and confirmed that he was undoubtedly immortal, and he couldn't help being shocked. Could it be that in Kunlun is the mortal world? How is this possible? Isn't this yellow star living in all four directions in the mortal world, guarding the spiritual world, and connected by the wild sea? But he was sure that he was immortal collecting medicine. Thinking of this, Zuyun quickly caught up with him. The closer he got, the deeper his heart sank. "Old man, may I ask where this is?" After chasing him not far away, Zuyun suddenly spoke, his voice extremely loud. The old man turned around, saw Zuyun, and couldn't help but smile. "Are you a monk from the spiritual world who accidentally entered the fairyland here?" He looked like a mortal, but he was not at all as respectful as a monk in the ordinary mortal world. Zuyun was shocked. It was easy to ask questions, especially what the old man said, the fairyland. "Old man, I accidentally broke in from outside, so..." The old man smiled and waved his hand, interrupted Zuyun's words, and said to himself, "It seems that another 1,000 years have passed. Every 1,000 years, someone will fall into it by mistake. Young man, come with me." He did not answer Zuyun's question, but what he said made Zuyun even more suspicious. After being slightly startled, he saw that the old man was already walking away into the distance, so he hurriedly followed him. Without saying a word, he followed the old man until he reached a cave. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1269. Old man, is this your home? Zuyun was very curious, so he didn't use his spiritual sense to explore. The old man's words revealed something mysterious, but no matter how he looked at him, he was still immortal, so he was still afraid of scaring him. Here, the old man explained with a smile, this is the tunnel leading to the fairyland. The immortal kingdom, what immortal kingdom is it? Zuyun murmured a few words, watched the old man get in, and quickly followed. It's for Qingping Fairy Kingdom. The old man did not hide anything and said the name of the fairyland, but the word Qingping made Zuyun's mind feel like being struck by lightning. These two words were extremely familiar to him. Because Fen Tianyan was once found by the immortal emperor from the world star named Qingping Star. So, is there any connection between Qingping Star and Qingping Fairy Kingdom? Is there some secret hidden somewhere? Zuyun thought to himself that Fen Tianyan had been in the past for a long time, and even if there was any connection, he couldn't know anything from the old man's mouth, so he stopped asking questions and followed closely. After walking for about an hour, a bright light appeared in front of the cave. It was obvious that he was about to leave the cave, but Zuyun was convinced that he was definitely not leaving Kunlun Mountain, but had arrived at the Qingping Fairy Kingdom mentioned by the old man. Until he got out of the hole, a vast world appeared in front of Zuyun. Looking around, it was the same world, but it was an eye-opener for Zuyun. Countless duckweeds were flying in the sky. There are dozens of duckweeds as big as they are, and maybe only a fingernail plate as small as one. The sun was hanging high in the sky, and the countless sunlight shining down could only pass through the gaps where the duckweeds intersected. "Old man, is this the Qingping Fairy Kingdom?" Zuyun asked in shock, as he had never seen such a vision before. But the old man seemed to be unconcerned and said with a smile, "Yes, the Qingping Fairy Kingdom came from this. Without these Qingping, the scorching sun would be like fire, roasting the creatures below into charcoal, and the living beings would be burned alive, burned to death. Is the sun so powerful?" Zuyun looked towards the sky again, but no matter how he looked at it, he felt that it was a beautiful sight with endless golden light. "If you don't believe it, just put out a finger and try it, but the old man still advises you not to do it." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand. Only then did Zuyun realize that the old man only had 8 fingers in total. "Thank you, husband, for reminding me." Zuyun cupped his hands and said. Immortals don't need to be polite. The old man knew the name of monk Zuyun, but he changed his words at this time and said, "There are also people who cultivate immortals here, but they are called immortals, and we mortals are called immortal people. Every 1,000 years, the fairy kingdom becomes tense." Although the old man does not know the specific reason, he also knows that it is inseparable from you immortals. Zuyun thanked him again. The old man was reminding him. "You come with the old man. The old man's home is at the foot of the mountain. Remember to walk in the shadow of Qingping to avoid being exposed to the sun." Zuyun quickly agreed, withdrew his gaze and turned to the shadow on the ground. After coming out of the cave, it was not at the bottom of the mountain, but halfway up the mountain. He had no intention of appreciating the scenery that was completely different from the spiritual world or the mortal world. "But I couldn't help but think that after arriving at the old man's home, I would go and find out the way to leave." From the moment he met the old man, he revealed a huge amount of information. Zuyun knew that the stranger this place was, the more careful he needed to be. In the air, the spiritual power is particularly active, and Zuyun's 5 spiritual roots can also feel that the spiritual power of each system is particularly full, which is several times richer than the spiritual world. If you are a monk from the spirit world, you must practice here and get twice the result with half the effort, but it is still not as good as the immortal mansion and the great universe world. Zuyun secretly thought, but he ignored that he himself had already begun to focus on absorbing the chaos power of refining the void. After all, it is the void of the immortal world. No matter how mysterious the Qingping immortal kingdom is, the old man is just immortal. But when we first met, he said that another 1,000 years had passed. Could it be that the old man had lived for 1,000 years? Zuyun secretly guessed and wanted to ask the old man, but secretly felt that it was inappropriate. More importantly, I still have some disbelief in my heart. I am a monk who has not reached 1,000 years old. How can you, a mortal, reach 1,000 years old? It's incredible. Winding down the mountain road, the old man never took a break, and even his feet were extremely strong. Zuyun did not use his spiritual power and could only use the secret of immortality to keep up. It wasn't until he was approaching the foot of the mountain that the old man suddenly stopped, smiled, and said to Zuyun, "The immortals are much more powerful than the ones the old man brought here last time." Zuyun was surprised and said, "Can I see this too?" The old man said, "Outside is the fairy land called the spiritual world, right?" The old man brought in back then walked around, rested several times, and asked the old man to wait for him. "But the fairy can always follow him." "Old man, this is evident." Zuyun smiled and said nothing, but he didn't care in his heart. "After all, I am also in the stage of becoming a god. What you brought in last time was probably just a small cultivation of qi, right? At most, it can only build a foundation. The monks in these 2 realms have not yet released their inner spiritual power, and cannot temper their bodies. If they are as cautious as me, they will certainly not be as good as you, an immortal who has been going up and down the mountain to collect medicine for many years, without using spiritual power. However, the old man said before that it was another 1,000 years. Could it be that they were the immortals brought in 1,000 years ago? It's easy to walk in the mountains, except for the green pods in the sky that block it. However, there are also ancient trees in the mountains that we haven't seen before, which can also block us a lot. However, it is much more difficult to walk outside the mountains. However, Zuyun was also puzzled. Are there any mysteries about the trees in the mountains? Why can the sun burn out all the sunlight, but cannot burn out the trees in the mountains? Also, you could see a small town several miles away at this time. Could it be that the houses in the small town were all built in shadows? Zuyun vaguely felt that the old man was hiding something from him, but since he was new to this place, he would be wrong if he talked too much, so he decided to follow him into the fairyland and find an opportunity to ask Fen Tianyan, maybe he could get useful information. After going down the mountain, there is a small road. You can tell at a glance that this path is made by walking. Even if the old man walks up this mountain every day for 1,000 years, he still can't step on it. After all, Zuyun is also a little kid who came from the barren rock mountain and has been walking in the mountains since he was a child. If it were a mortal effort, this path would not be that easy. After walking for a while, the path gradually became wider, and there were even several other paths leading to the mountains, which looked similar. Zuyun stopped talking and kept following the old man, but secretly noted which path he came from. For him, none of this is difficult. He just thinks that if he has no other way to escape from this fairyland, he can only go through this way. In less than an hour, the path turned into a stone road, and the smile on the old man's face became even bigger. After passing an archway, the old man turned a corner and said, "Fairy, the old man's home is over there, but it's just I can keep you overnight. Are there any rules for outsiders in this town?" Zuyun took a look at the small town. There were not many people there, but the small town was as good as the small town at the foot of the Lingjian Sect mountain. The only difference is that this small town is full of ordinary people like old men, but strangely, it is mostly old people. Every time there are outsiders, you need to report to the immortal official, otherwise the old man will commit a serious crime. Zuyun remembered that when the old man said this, he clenched his fist and loosened it again. He secretly felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out the reason. Maybe there was something hidden, but he could only seek stability. I still have to worry about my father-in-law. Zuyun thought for a moment and took out a middle-grade spiritual stone from his ring. There are also spiritual weapons in this place, and I think spiritual stones are also universal. Immortal, this stone is worthless to us. But who would have thought that the old man's words were astonishing? Middle-grade spiritual stones are also hard currency in the spiritual world. High-grade spiritual stones are basically only used during the Mahayana and Tribulation stages. Even in the integration stage, most of them are still used. Middle-grade spiritual stone. But Immortal actually said that spiritual stones are worthless? The Immortal will know tomorrow. Our Qingping Immortal Kingdom has no shortage of these stones. Look at this stone road. The old man pointed to his feet. Zuyun was immediately shocked. He had never used his spiritual power, nor used his spiritual consciousness and soul to investigate. Now when he took a look, he discovered that the entire stone road was paved with spiritual stones. This fairyland. In fact, the immortal does not need to give benefits to the old man. After reporting to the immortal official will naturally reward the old man. Therefore, the old man is also willing to bring the immortal to this fairy country. Then what do you use for your daily expenses? Zuyun became curious, thinking that Qingping Immortal Kingdom even used spiritual stones to pave the way. Wouldn't the elixir be used to feed pigs? Perhaps, this mortal can also live for 1,000 years, maybe this is the relationship. No wonder they dare to be called immortals. We use these small beads. One small bead is enough for us for a while. However, sometimes it is mostly barter. The elixir collected in Kunlun, or some animal bones, can be used of. Zuyun didn't pay attention to the beads, thinking they were valuable things like pearls, but animal bones. They are the bones of monsters, the old man said with a smile. Sometimes we need to pick up bones. Some monsters fought and died after being exposed to the sun. Those bones can be used as medicine and are also of great use to officials, so we picked them up. It can be exchanged for our daily needs. Of course, we can also exchange these beads for easy storage, but we are afraid of losing them. Zuyun then looked towards his hand, and his expression changed again. What this old man is holding is actually a fire spirit bead. This is a fire-based treasure, and it is in the hands of Immortal of the old man. This is simply unbelievable. Come to think of it, animal bones are even more unimaginable. Since animal bones are valuable, why don't I pick them up? Zuyun thought for a while and then asked. Although monsters are terrifying to mortals, they are dead after all. In which round will it be picked up by people like us? There are special bone pickers here, and they need a certain amount of strength, otherwise they won't be able to grab them. The old man used to be a bone picker, but then he accidentally burned a few of them in the sun finger, so he became a pharmacist. Medicine was also needed by the government, so the old man had to go out alone to collect medicine. With that said, he took off the beetroot from his back and showed it to Zuyun. This is Yan Hunsen. Zuyun was shocked again. How could Qingping Fairy Kingdom be related to Jidan sect again? Could it be that Jidan sect is a sect that comes from this fairy land, so that's why it seems a bit mysterious? I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1270. Smoke soul powder also exists in the spirit world. It is a spiritual medicine that can be seen, but it is not very useful. It was also because the Jidan sect used smoke soul powder to wipe out the entire Balian sect that Zuyun knew the horror of smoke soul powder. And in Kunlun, the old immortals of Qingping Immortal Kingdom saw smoke soul powder in the medicine, which made Zuyun unable to help but associate it with the Jidan sect. The immortals actually recognized this herb? That's a bit easier. This smoke soul powder is a spiritual medicine that our Qingping Immortal Kingdom consumes a lot. If you can collect it, you can give it to the immortal officials in exchange for these beads. The old man was also a little surprised. Old man, Zuyun asked in a low voice, is this medicine stored in the mountains outside? Yes, the old man said, I went outside to collect it. This one can be exchanged for a bead. He raised the fire spirit bead in his hand. Zuyun understood and secretly remembered it in his heart. The spirit beads were not urgently needed for him at present, but if he collected more, he could prepare for emergencies. Just like the incarnation was destroyed, if he still had spirit beads on him, he could condense them again. He followed the old man for a while and finally arrived at an ordinary courtyard. The old man led him into the house and said that he wanted to give the smoke soul powder and let Zuyun stay in his house for a while until he came back. Zuyun agreed happily, and after the old man left, he began to look at the old man's house. From the traces, the old man was a solitary old man. But if you really say old, he is different from the old man in the mortal world. Although he seems to be in his twilight years, this old man is an immortal who has lived for at least 1,000 years. Live alone for 1,000 years? He can't practice, and he has no hope. If he lives by collecting herbs all day, others don't know, but Zuyun feels that he will definitely not be able to bear it. He said that the 3 fingers were broken because he was also a bone collector. Bone collectors collect the bones of monsters. If they don't have some skills, they probably won't be able to do it. But he gave me the feeling of an ordinary old man, who was just a little more agile. Zuyun wrote down these doubts one by one and decided to wait and see. He has always been careful, especially when he came to this strange place. But, suddenly, he remembered something and said to himself, I wonder if this so-called immortal official family is from the Jiden sect. This Jingping immortal kingdom seems peaceful, but it is under this peace that he reveals his puzzlement everywhere. Jiden sect is also a sect that is very good at making money. It seems that it also has dealings with those small cultivators and has no realm restrictions, but how many cultivators are there in the entire spiritual world? Bailian sect is already a wealthy sect, but it has been calculated by Jiden sect for a long time. However, Zuyun also feels that what Jiden sect showed is just the tip of the iceberg. Perhaps his background is in this Jingping immortal kingdom. Suddenly, Zuyun thought of Qin Tianji again. He said that there would be changes in this trip to the Ascension secret realm. Although he came out early, the old man said that strangers would come in every 1,000 years. Could it be? When the Ascension secret realm opens, it is also the opening day of this fairy land. When Zuyun thought of this, he was suddenly shocked. Does that mean that when it closes, the Qingping immortal kingdom will also be closed? Suddenly, Zuyun completely forgot about the spirit stones and spirit beads. He just wanted to go back along the original path and leave Kunlun. But just as he walked out of the house, the old man had already returned, and he also brought several cultivators whose realms he couldn't even see through. Sir, he is the immortal I brought today. See how many spirit beads he is worth. The old man smiled flatteringly, not caring that Zuyun was right in front of him, and his appearance was completely different from when he first met him. Zuyun did not say anything and punched out directly. Wan Ji Sheng. Thinking that the sunlight here was unusual, he used the coldest punch in the chaos fist. Fist. A cultivator chuckled disdainfully, and with a quiet dance in his hand, a phantom shield suddenly appeared. Wherever the fist went, there was a loud explosion, and the phantom shield also flashed with golden light, but it was motionless. This golden light. Zuyun was shocked. The golden light made him very familiar. It was clearly the kind he had seen before, but what surprised him even more was that this shield could not be blasted open by the chaos fist. Come again. He concentrated his mind and punched out again, still the chaos fist, but this time he used the first move. All things are awake. The undissipated cold air in the air gradually warmed up, and there were traces of vitality. This kind of change finally made the faces of these immortal officials change a little. Didn't you say that he was an immortal from the outside world? Why does he know this seasonal immortal method? Seasonal immortal method? Zuyun frowned. He knew that this was the name of his chaos fist, but on what basis? The chaos fist originated from the upper realm. Could it be that it coincided with some of the laws here? Immortal Kingdom. Zuyun remembered the name of Qingping Immortal Kingdom. The old man cried out in injustice and said, Immortal official, I really brought it in from the mountains outside the country, and you can also calculate the time. It should be the year when the country's gate is opened. Humph, the country's gate opens one day every 1,000 years, but isn't it a little early? Although Zuyun's all things so caused these immortal officials to change color, he still did not break the phantom shield, and he did not continue to act, listening to the immortal officials scolding the old man. He did come from the outside world, and these immortal officials did see the cultivators from the spirit world. The old man told the truth but aroused the suspicion of the immortal officials, so the problem can only be his own. The only possibility is that this chaos fist exceeds their understanding of the spiritual world. Thinking of this, Zuyun took a few steps back and returned to the courtyard, but he had already planned to continue using chaos fist later. Although he couldn't cause effective damage, he couldn't wipe out all his cards in one move. Especially before you understand the situation at hand. Zuyun here was calm and composed, but the old man was frightened and quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Get away. One of the immortal officials obviously couldn't get any valid information from him, so he kicked the old man away. Then his face changed, he greeted Zuyun with a smile, and said politely, "This immortal official, that little old man didn't realize you were coming from outside the city, please forgive me." Zuyun had doubts in his heart, knowing that his chaos fist had caused a misunderstanding, but at the same time, he also knew that there were other places besides this small town. Also, how could it be that the name of the majestic fairyland could only be so big? However, he knew nothing about the immortal kingdom, so he simply said, "Huh, I'm from abroad. If you want to do something, just come." "I'm sorry, immortal. Since you can use the seasonal immortal technique, presumably it's the seasonal immortal route. We can't afford to offend you. Don't be joking. This little old man has offended you, immortal. Please don't worry about it. If someone makes a mistake, forgive him." After that, these immortal officials all handed over their hands, seemingly sincere. Zuyun narrowed his eyes. This was the first time he heard the name Immortal Gen. But thinking about it, it is the same as the spiritual root. If it is replaced by spiritual roots, my seasonal immortal roots can be called seasonal spiritual roots. How is it possible that someone has seasonal roots as his spiritual root? But after all, he is a person who has seen the world, especially the relationship between Qingping Fairy Kingdom and Qingping Star. He did not accept the goodwill shown by these people hastily, but was ambiguous and said, "I went outside to look for some cigarette smoke. Who knows what the old man misunderstood, but I have never been here before. I just followed him here. It turns out that the immortal wandered into our small border town by mistake. He is a guest from afar. How about the immortal come and sit in our official residence? We are not allowed to drink while we are on duty, but there is good tea." The immortal official was extremely polite. Zuyun thought to himself that since the other party had lowered his attitude, if he refused again, he would inevitably make the other party suspicious, but entering the official palace was tantamount to dancing on the tip of a knife. But if you can muddle through, you might be able to gain something. Anyway, the fire incarnation is still in the spirit world, so the worst thing is, take the risk. Then I'd rather be respectful than obey my orders. Zuyun cupped his hands, and then looked indifferently outside the small courtyard. The old man could not move, but his chest was still heaving, and he was obviously seriously injured. This is all his own fault. Zuyun didn't have any sympathy. If the old man hadn't attracted these immortal officials, he wouldn't be like this. He just entered this place by mistake. Following several immortal officials walking outside, two of them looked the most majestic and were separated from each other. However, when the last immortal official passed by the old man, he saw that he suddenly reached out and slashed at him. A blade of light appeared out of thin air and cut off one of the old man's fingers. The old man had long been unconscious, but he screamed miserably at the pain of the severed finger. His body suddenly arched up like a shrimp, and then returned to lying on the ground. Just listen to the immortal official who took action say, "I saw that you were missing a few fingers, you are a person with a criminal record, which attracted the immortals from outside the city, but do you want to destroy our Duxian town?" There was a hint of resentment in his words, and it didn't look like he was being hypocritical. Zuyun subconsciously stopped and was thinking about the message in these words, but he asked the two accompanying immortal officials to laugh and say, "Immortals, don't be offended. This is the rule of our town, little old man. If you make a mistake, you will be punished by cutting off your finger. The colleague who made the move is the one responsible for the punishment, and he is the only sword immortal root in our town. Dao Xianxia." Zuyun frowned, using the knife as an immortal root. If he still doesn't understand the seasonal roots, then the so-called knife immortal roots are much more popular. He couldn't help but think of Ling Zun's sword master, the one who used his sword to enter the Tao during the tribulation period. Can this immortal official be regarded as a monk who is born with the ability to enter the Tao with a sword? It's okay, Zuyun chuckled while thinking deeply in his heart and said, I just think that this sword technique is good. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding.